Welcome to Ferrari 156. Here's the chassis, or as they used to say in Blue Peter in the UK kids program, here's one I started earlier, because I literally did start this earlier, as in like 12 years ago. This was going to be a V12, 1966 V12 Ferrari replica, but I gave up on that project, sold it to a bloke. I just brought it all back. So here we are. This already exists. Master cylinders go up here, all tank goes on the front, dampers down there, rockers sit out there, front low wishbone pickup, steering rack across here, anti-roll bar. These holes are for water and oil to come up along the chassis, and the rest of it sitting there ready to be skinned in aluminium and sort of 2/3 of the way there. Now, so moving on to the front suspension, while you weren't looking, I made those. Actually made them 12 years ago, the rest of the car. Front rocker mounts up there, and that's pretty much the top end of the front suspension taken care of. But for the lower wishbone, the front leg mounts here onto the chassis already there. And for the rear leg, it goes in there somewhere, and we need to create a skyhook basically in the middle of nowhere. Slight nuisance, but there's a way of doing it, and it needs to be strong enough that if we ever have the unthinkable and crash into something, it doesn't destroy this part of the monocoque. So you need to make the inboard part sturdy like a Formula Ford, so it can be crashed and repaired easily. Once again, I've been getting ahead of myself. That's our skyhook, which is a bit of, I think, 1.25 inch tube, squashed slightly. It's got a nut and a bush welded on top, one underneath. That'll sit in there, and if it's got, that's then obviously braced to the floor. And if I brace it longitudinally, that'll be pretty sturdy, and the chassis skin will come along just attached to there and sneak under here, so you can get still get a bolt in from underneath. So just that bit will protrude. Just fairly tidy and strong enough. I'll weld it in. There's our skyhook welded into place. A little 5/16, 3/8 joint goes in there. 5/16 bolt up from underneath. That'll work. Now, it's obviously, that'll be quite good at taking a lateral load, completely useless at taking a longitudinal load. So to fulfill that requirement, this one I prepared earlier, this gets welded on like so, same profile as the skin, so it gets welded and riveted and glued onto the chassis skin, and takes care of the longitudinal load by feeding it into the skin of the monocoque. Still room for the bolt to pop in from underneath, and fairly tidy. So there's our skyhook welded in place, and that bit of sheet metal lines up with the bulkheads in front of and behind it, which is the plan. So the chassis skin will rivet onto it nicely, rivet and glue, which should be enough, but due to lack of confidence and why not, I put that in as well. Couldn't help myself. Very little weight, and no one sees it. Plus, you know, if the thing ever does cause the chassis skin to wrinkle, I'll be very sad. The other way to obviously try not to let that happen is to not bake the wishbones too strong, so it buckles first. But we'll get to that in due course. Continuing now with our front suspension, having got our skyhook built and in place for the rear leg of the front lower wishbone. The front leg attaches here, existing bracket. Even though it's all done obviously to drawing and located as best we can per the drawing, it's fabricated, so things do move a little bit, plus a little bit of inaccuracy on the fabricator's part. So what we do now is measure exactly where they are relative to the car and relative to each other, and make a drawing for the front lower wishbone, and from the drawing we make a jig. Okay, so here's our wishbone jig. A couple of bits of, what are they there, 50 by 25 or something, probably from the tip by looking at them. Holes in them from different wishbones over the years, but this one rear leg, front leg and outboard. Some little machine bushes to go on there, and the upright, they go inside the tube obviously, and the upright bits, just a bit of 20 by 20 with the appropriate holes in it, one up the bottom to locate it. And on the outboard end, big 5/8 joint, and then the tubes that go on there, that's the front leg tube, goes like that. On the original genuine Ferrari, that joined on there like so. So it just had a butt weld around here. And it also, because this leg isn't square to the centre line of the car, it means that's got a trail on it, which means that when you adjust the camber, you adjust the caster as well, which is okay, but not ideal. I've done it slightly differently. I've put that square to the car centre line, so that this tube's got a notch in it and wraps around the front of the bush, which means you get a bit more purchase on it, longer weld. And on the inboard end, on these tubes, rather than just cutting them off square and making a circular weld, by putting that little detail on it, you get a longer weld, which is good, and it also holds the bush more stably and puts the weld partly in shear, which is stronger. And importantly, it looks nice. Rear leg like so, over to there. And in the time-honoured fashion, here's one I made earlier. So that ends up like that. The only thing still to do, when there's when all the braking load's on here, all the front braking load's on that joint, which puts a bit of twist on that. So I'll make a little gusset to go in here just to stiffen up that assembly. Stand by. Here's our little knocking block for making the gusset. That'll be our gusset. These are a couple of scrap bits from the outside of a plate that had something cut out of it. Little radius on there. Holes to hold it all together. That goes in there like so. That clamps it down. 3 bolts to hold it all together. Let me just tap that down with a hammer. Tap, tap, tap. When it's done, we end up with a thing that looks like that, which is nice. Does the job nicely because it doesn't, it's got a sort of change in stiffness as it goes along, and fits nicely like that in the wishbone and makes it look sexy. And we're done. Weld it in, and that bit's done. And here's something else I made earlier, all nickel plated and everything. It's front rocker, made about 10 years ago. The only thing I'd say, nice and strong, which rockers need to be, and those two skins aren't parallel to each other, they're not flat, which gives you a nice crown in here that stops the thing buckling. That's done. Anti-roll bar can go there, shock can go there, and the bearings are in this little housing, which look very much like the real Ferrari one, just a little sealed deep groove ball. Rockers have to be quite strong to do their job. Downside of that is if the unthinkable happens and you crash into something, they tend to tear the car apart. So this is deliberately not too strong to be a frangible link between the car and the rocker. So that'll break rather than pull the chassis apart. And just bolt it to the chassis and that'll work out. Carrying on with the theme of, here's one I made earlier, there's our front upright, fabricated from 4130 mostly, and zinc plated. So it goes up like that. Lower wishbone, rocker, steering arm, brake caliper. You notice there's no bearing floor in there, but these 4 bolts are to attach this thing, which I think's off the back of a Ford Mondeo or some sort of Mazda on memory, which just bolts on there. And it's got the bearings and the flange and everything all bolted into one. Just bolted straight on, nice and simple. A little bit heavy, but good for what we're doing. And to close the chapter, shock absorber in place. There's our rocker on its little frangible mounts. Lower wishbone bolted in place. Front upright, which steers. We'll have a steering rack there one day. And a lot of friction in that shock, but goes up and down, which may not be exactly exciting, but it's rewarding. It'll work. And finally, our little wishbone gusset welded in place.